The Paddy Power Half Hour on OTB Sports. Minimal contact in stadiums. That shouldn't stop the usual suspects from going down. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Now you're welcome along to the Paddy Power Half Hour here in Off the Ball. Every Friday at 1:30 we look ahead to the biggest games of the weekend, tell you what to watch and why, and we also hopefully will navigate our way through the betting markets as well. Joining us on the line this week, Statsman, is odds compiler from Paddy Power, Emmet O'Keefe. Emmet, how are you getting on?
Not too bad. Looking forward to an exciting weekend of sport.
And we've done a bit of a switcheroo here in Off the Ball this week. I'm sitting in for Ger, which means we have recruited Off the Ball's number one football commentator, that is Nathan Murphy. Nathan, how are you getting on?
Thank you for that appropriate introduction there, Enda.
Well, that's
I
it.
couldn't miss it. I heard you're giving away $10,500 every week, so I wanted to be a part of that.
We're giving it away to you and everyone else who is listening to the Paddy Power Half Hour here. That's coming a little bit later on. But first, we do have some Champions League stuff to look at before we get into this week's fixtures, because the draw took place this morning. It's quite juicy, I have to say. Porto take on Chelsea, Liverpool against Real Madrid, Bayern against PSG, Dortmund against Man City. Liverpool taking on Real Madrid, the Salah-Ramos duel coming back. Nathan, what are your thoughts?
Two teams not quite where they were when they met in the Champions League final a couple of years ago at this stage. I think Liverpool will be relatively happy with that draw. Real Madrid don't strike fear into anybody's hearts right now. They don't have much of an X factor, though they do know how to win this competition. And then you go on and it's Porto or Chelsea. You would expect Chelsea to be strong favourites for that. They would feel that an all-English clash in the semi-final, well, maybe it's 2005 all over again. But the draw does, on current form, seem quite lopsided towards the Manchester City, Bayern Munich, Paris Saint-Germain side of the draw. And right now, I would expect that the odds suggest one of those sides will win the tournament. But by the time we get through this international break, if Jordan Henderson is back for quarterfinals, heading towards semi-finals, well, maybe Liverpool are a slightly different proposition. Yeah,
and some startling sort of similarities between that 05 Champions League, where I'm pretty sure Chelsea played a Portuguese side in the quarterfinals that year too, and Liverpool were outside of the top four. So if it's a repeat of that, you'd be happy enough as a Liverpool fan. In terms of the actual Champions League draw, because I mean there's some quality games there, the excitement of this draw really does make a mockery of the whole Super League sort of proposal, because you're not getting the excitement of a Dortmund playing Man City in a one-off game as you would be if it was in a Super League every single year.
I'm not in favour of the Super League anyways, because Manchester City against Dortmund, the excitement is that it's a one-off, a two-legged game. That if this is a regular event, is there a rivalry there between Chelsea and Borussia Dortmund? No, there's not. Maybe there'll be one next year if Erling Haaland ends up at Manchester City. But I'm not in favour of any competition that is a league format that involves you getting on a plane for a match. I would much prefer the Premier League stays exactly as it is. And why change the greatest club competition in the world, in the Champions League, that delivers year after year after year, drama upon drama, technical skill, the likes you don't see in the Premier League or anywhere else. When these top teams come together, they always tend to deliver. So why change that? Why take the dramatic element out of it and turn these into run-of-the-mill fixtures that I'm sure they will sell out, I'm sure they will earn lots of money, but right now, I just can't see myself buying into a Manchester City, Borussia Dortmund on a regular basis.
Yeah, exactly. And there are actually some run-of-the-mill games coming up this weekend that we're going to be previewing in a little bit. But before we get to that, as Nathan mentioned, we did give away €11,500 last week on the show. And that is with our new segment, the PP Near Miss. It is essentially a competition where you can reclaim a losing bet stake. And last week we gave away €11,500 to one lucky winner. It's called the near miss because if you nearly win a Premier League bet, and if you have had a single bet or an accumulator let down by one option, then you can send that, screenshot it and send it in to us. And every week we will select winners who will get their stake refunded, or they will get their full payout as well. So take a screenshot of your losing bet, send it to us with the hashtag PPNearMiss on Twitter. You can DM us on Instagram, or you can send it on WhatsApp as well. 087 180 180 is the number to get that. Obviously T's and C's apply with that as well. We'll get into the fixtures this week. It's sort of a mixed bag of fixtures because we've got Premier League games. Fulham against Leeds tonight at 8 o'clock. West Ham against Arsenal tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Brighton versus Newcastle, and Aston Villa against Tottenham. That makes up the Premier League fixtures. They're all sort of different game weeks. We're going to be looking ahead to the Celtic against Rangers game, which is in the SPFL on Sunday. And then we've got FA Cup quarterfinals as well. Bournemouth against Southampton, Everton against Man City, Chelsea take on Sheffield United, and Leicester City against Man United, 5:30 on Sunday. We will start with the Paddy Power specials though, because that's what we usually do going in on a Friday. We had a winner last week with the North London Derby. Booking points came through thanks to Eric Lamela and his hot head. This week we're going for booking points in the Old Firm game, because obviously that has a bit of bite in it. Sheffield United to have no shots on target in that game, and Vardy to have more assists than goals this weekend. Emmet, how are those bets looking?
Yes, there's a few interesting ones here. We'll start with Jamie Vardy. I think it's been kind of well chronicled that Harry Kane has kind of changed his game this season and kind of become more of a creative number 10, which has seen him lead the league in Premier League assists. But Vardy has also shown real growth in that area. Since Vardy became Leicester's main striker when they won the Premier League in 2015-16, he's averaged one assist every 8 matches, whereas this season he's averaging an assist one every 3 matches, with 2 last week. And I'll have more opportunities to do that playing in a strike partnership with the informed Kelechi Iheanacho. Vardy's only scored 1 goal since Christmas as well, but I wouldn't necessarily expect that run to continue as he's still getting plenty of chances. But we make it 7-1 that Vardy will have more assists than goals against United. With the Sheffield United shots on target, under Thomas Tuchel, Chelsea have only conceded 2 shots on target per game on average, which should be similar to what Man City's numbers are over the entire season, and kind of a tribute to their well-organised pressing game. And then Sheffield United have the second lowest number of shots on target in the league, so it's strength against weakness here. And so we're as short as 11-4 that Sheffield United won't have a shot on target here against Chelsea. And then in the Old Firm, we've enhanced 60 booking points or more from 6-5 to 6-4. So for those who maybe haven't bet in that market before, it's 10 points for a yellow and 25 points for a red.
And then it's obviously better like Lamela, where he got booked before he was sent off as well. So that enhances it even further, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. It's maximum 25 points per player.
Okay, fair enough. I'm wrong on that then. Let's get into the Premier League fixtures then. Fulham against Leeds, which is Friday at 8 o'clock, tonight at 8 o'clock. And both these teams go into this game sort of in a weird way of form. Neither of them can really score that much. Leeds obviously 0-0 with Chelsea last week, and Fulham well beaten by Man City. Leeds aren't in their best form as they were in the previous, 3 to 4 months in the season. They're not scoring all that many goals. They've only got 1 win from their last 5, and they've only scored in 1 of those 5 games. So it's been a real struggle for them to actually get going over the last couple of weeks. Maybe it's a bit of tiredness, maybe it's the pitch that they're playing on at Ellen Road, but they do have a better record away from home. One thing going into this game to keep an eye out for is Fulham, and the fact that they can actually crawl out of the relegation zone if they win this game, albeit that will actually only be until Newcastle play Brighton the following day. But that will be, I'd imagine, what Scott Parker is saying going into this game. Emmet, I presume that Leeds would be slight favourite for this just because of where they are in the table.
Surprisingly not, and it's kind of a sign, I think, of how much Fulham have grown over the last kind of couple of months. And as you alluded to, Leeds have declined. So Fulham are 7-5, the draw 9-4, and Leeds 19-10. I think one thing we're pretty confident here is in that the Fulham defence is absolutely legit. And even though that they conceded 3 to City last week, but that was mainly through kind of bad back passes and conceding from a set piece. Before that, the City game, Fulham had only conceded 2 goals in their past 7 games. And it's not the most fun bet to be having watching a game on a Friday evening, but the bet I'd lean towards here would be maybe under 1.5 goals at 9-4. I just think the Fulham defence is outstanding, and I can see that being a fairly close game. Yeah,
so last week I actually had under 1.5 goals, under 2.5 goals rather than the Chelsea Leeds game. Does the fact that Leeds were so free scoring earlier on in the season, is that still impacting how well people are actually laying on them to score? Because I presume that under 1.5 goals would be the smart bet, because people would still be considering them to score quite a few goals.
100%. The pricing for those markets is usually done on the big sample size, as you mentioned. So it'll be their kind of season totals rather than kind of how they're doing their last couple of games.
So West Ham against Arsenal then, 3 o'clock on Saturday. That is David Moyes taking on Mikel Arteta. Nathan, what's your thoughts on this game?
Really looking forward to this because West Ham have been one of the more entertaining teams in the Premier League over the last few weeks and all season. And a win here with Chelsea playing in the Cup means they can go level on points with Chelsea in 4th. They've been in brilliant form at the Olympic Stadium, 5 wins in their last 6. We saw at times against Manchester United, probably why they won't finish in the top four, that David Moyes' inferiority complex away from home against the best teams, coming back to haunt them. They were incredibly, you could say, defensive or disciplined, but they never really took the game to Manchester United until it was too late. I don't think they'll go into this game with a similar attitude. And ever since they were beaten by Arsenal in, the second week of the season, their record at home has been outstanding. In fact, their record in general, the only teams that have beaten them are City, United, Liverpool and Chelsea. So they don't slip up against the mid-table teams, which is really what Arsenal are right now. 10th seems about right. They're very inconsistent. They've won 3 of their last 8. Still have huge issues in the middle of midfield. Okay, there's exciting attacking talent coming through in the 3 behind the front man with Smith Rowe and Saka and Odegaard, but they still have a bit to go before they're doing it week in, week out on a consistent basis. And I'm not in any way convinced that Arsenal are making very much progress at all. I'm reading that they're good to watch over the last few weeks. I find them very, very dull, very predictable. And having had to play on Thursday night in the Europa League, I wouldn't be at all surprised if West Ham go and win this game, because I think looking at those 2 11s with the West Ham side, with Soufal, it was interesting listening to Gareth Southgate talking about all the right backs that they have at England at the moment, whereas Soufal is in the mix to be the best right back in the league this season. Soucek was a brilliant signing. Declan Rice is the best young midfielder in the league right now, and Jesse Lingard has come in and made a big impact. So I would expect West Ham to go and win this game. Yeah, Jesse Lingard actually got a call up for the England squad as a result of his form over the last couple of weeks. Emmet, who is coming out on top here? Is it West Ham that would be favourites going into this?
No, surprise the Arsenal slight favourites. West Ham 7-4, the draw 12-5, and Arsenal just under 6-4. Yeah, I'd echo Nathan's thoughts. I think West Ham's priced a little big, but I'm quite scarred by their performance last week at Old Trafford. It took them 56 minutes to have a shot, and that was after United had scored. And for context, West Ham would averaged around 12 shots per match. They completely went against defensive, and as well didn't make any sense because United have had significant issues defending set pieces, and West Ham were the best team from scoring from set pieces in the whole league, and you can't get in set pieces if you sit back and defend for the whole game. So their approach really didn't make sense.
Yeah, and as soon as United,
I was going to say those odds have to be based on a historical basis in Arsenal's historical reputation, because there's nothing really this season to suggest that Arsenal should go and win this game.
Arsenal's statistics would have improved, and they are prone to the error, like Granit Xhaka kicking the ball off Chris Wood and that kind of thing. I think their general performance has been actually, I would say, quite good in the last few months. And I think we've seen, it's hard to say they're really progressing when they're finishing 10th, but I think we've seen some pretty good form in the Europa League, and they have more competition for places and more energy up front. And if you look at, I'm not sure that many teams could have comprehensively outplayed Tottenham like they did in the London Derby last week. That was a really impressive performance.
Yeah, well, I think Arsenal are sort of where Spurs were a couple of years ago, where you just don't know where they're going to turn up. Next up is the Saturday 8 o'clock fixture, and this is one to avoid. If you have something to do on Saturday night, if you want to watch a movie, then stick it on. Do not be watching Brighton against Newcastle, because both these teams go into this game in absolutely torrid form, both fighting for relegation and both averaging less than a point a game at the minute. So you're probably leaning towards a draw in this, if not at least a low-scoring game.
Enda Coll's weekly hammer Brighton slot.
Listen,
what has Graham Potter ever done against you? He's going to come out with all sorts of XG stats now around Brighton. Brighton are doing okay. They play good, entertaining football.
No, they don't.
Very low.
No,
budget.
they don't.
Yes,
no,
they
don't.
do. Yes,
Brighton,
they do.
Just because Brighton, and this is the main point I'll make in it, just because Brighton passed the ball more than Newcastle, it doesn't change the fact that they're still their standard. They still don't score many goals.
They work off a far lower budget.
Oh,
they play a standard of football that's far past what Chris Hughton was doing with the club. That's far more entertaining, that their supporters enjoy far more. They don't have a striker who can finish off the chances. But would you prefer, as a Brighton fan, to sit and watch a Chris Hughton team or a Graham Potter team? 99.9% of them will say a Graham Potter team. So what is the problem?
But they're still not creating. They're still not even scoring goals, though. That's the thing. They're just passing the ball more. It doesn't make a difference whether they're kicking the ball long and not scoring.
More chances. They're creating far more chances. They just don't have the quality of player, because they don't have the budget to sign the best strikers in the world to actually put away those goals.
Well, that's your opinion. Emmet, what are the markets saying on this one?
Yeah, so Brighton 8-13, the draw 5-2, and Newcastle 5-1. Yeah, having watched a few of Brighton's games under Chris Hughton, I'd certainly echo Nathan's sentiments here. I think they're far better to watch now. This season, like, I think Steve Bruce has reminded me he's a bit like kind of a villain in a horror movie who keeps coming back from the dead, even when you think he must be a goner. I felt at various points this season he was on the verge of the sack. I think he probably would have been if the club had a different owner. They somehow managed to nick a point against Villa in injury time last week, and they were battered by West Brom a couple of weeks ago. I think we know how this game's going to play out. Newcastle will sit deep, defend their box, and hope Brighton give them a goal in the break. But given how Brighton have played this year, I couldn't be confident that they won't give them a result. So no better recommendation here.
Tottenham beaten by a team with their manager in prison during the week. Nathan, are they going to beat a team with their manager on the sideline this week?
God, I cannot wait to see what happens over the next couple of days with Tottenham, because it was such a shitstorm after the game last night. Mourinho, 7-8 minutes of just dropping bombs. Hugo Lloris then is throwing grenades, probably because they were all around him from his teammates throwing them at him, where he's looking out and throwing accusations about us not all being in this together. And you're looking at Hugo Lloris and questioning his performances. So it's fallen apart in the most expected fashion, but maybe a little bit more dramatic than we expected from Tottenham. And if you go back to that North London derby in December, which was the Mourinho masterclass, 2 early goals against Arsenal, they've done little or nothing since then. I think it's 6 wins in 17 games, showed signs of revival over the past month, but as Emmet said, they were played off the park then by Arsenal last week. Gareth Bale, while he is now starting to deliver, didn't bring what you would expect from a player of his experience and success, a winning mentality. You talk to players who know him and played alongside him, they all speak so highly of him, but that he's a very quiet guy, and maybe he's not the presence in the dressing room that Spurs would have hoped he would have been, and bring that 4-time Champions League mentality to these players. So I have no idea what is going to happen with Tottenham between now and the end of the season, because if that's what Mourinho was like in public, what was he like in that dressing room? Who was he giving both barrels to? And who in that dressing room? You suspect in that dressing room there's a lot of suspicious minds there right now. So there could be an opportunity for a Villa side who are missing Jack Grealish, and Grealish is their star man. They're never going to be a club at the moment who have a second Jack Grealish, so when he's not there, they don't create as much, but they're still very solid at the back. It's going to be a sort of Mexican standoff where both of them are like, you have the ball, we don't want it.
Yeah, and I suppose this is the year that you would want the documentary to be there, because you'd see him talking and see those relationships develop over the course of the year. Emmet, how does a European defeat like that impact the market going into a game like this against Aston Villa?
Yeah, so we would have seen Villa shorten up from around kind of 9-4 into 15-8. But I guess the feeling would have been before the Dynamo Zagreb game that Spurs might have played a second team, and so they would have been better prepared here. But that's obviously not the case. And it looks like Jack Grealish could be back here. Just to echo what Nathan said in terms of how much Villa have missed him. Villa averaged 3.4 shots on target a game in the game he's missed this season, compared to 5.5 shots on target per game when he's there. And if Grealish is, wait for Team USA, but if Grealish is back, I'd fancy Villa here at 15-8.
Right, let's move on to the SPFL. We don't usually do the SPFL on the show, but it is Celtic against Rangers, 12 p.m. on Sunday. Celtic's third opportunity to take points off Rangers this year, albeit they do have a new manager in charge going into it. And with Gerrard's side losing during the week, there you might think that Celtic might be able to muster up something in order to stop Rangers going unbeaten in the league. However, their form has been absolutely dire too. They've had 2 weeks off since the Dundee United draw that caused Rangers to win the league. So you're just wondering what sort of Celtic side will actually turn up to this game. They were better than the first game in the second game against Rangers, where a moment of madness from Nir Bitton caused him get sent off, and then Rangers to dominate the game from then on. How is this one looking, Emmet? Because obviously Neil Lennon is no longer in charge. Form has improved under John Kennedy, but not to the extent where you'd think that Celtic are going to win the league, and Rangers losing midweek. So it's sort of up in the air and could go either way, as old firms tend to do.
Yeah, that's certainly reflected in the odds. The draw, so Celtic are 8-5, the draw 9-4, and Rangers also 8-5. Sorry, just have to say I misspoke earlier. The maximum number of booking points you can get is 35. So hopefully Scott Brown or Morelos will kind of get you a yellow then a red. I just throw it back to you, Enda, because you're probably more of an old firm expert than I would be. What do you make of the talk?
Is he going to cry live on air?
I was going to ask you, what do you make of the talk of Roy Keane potentially being next Celtic manager? We've seen a fair bit of money from this week.
It's absolute nonsense. I mean, he's being tagged with a club that because he used to play for the club and he didn't even like playing for the club. Look at his autobiography. He absolutely slams his time there. Said it was the most unprofessional club he played at. So why would he bother coming back to the club? He's not good enough to manage the side, and he's just not going to be the next manager. Celtic are going with a director of football model, and Roy Keane is not a director of football manager. So that's just not going to happen. And I think people are wasting their money putting any money on Roy Keane being the new Celtic manager.
Enda, should Celtic give Rangers the Guard of Honour?
I don't think so. I don't think anybody should give anybody a Guard of Honour. It's the biggest load of nonsense in football, regardless of whether...
Surely if you're John Kennedy, you're looking at those players in the dressing room and saying you're failures, you've let this club down, you've missed out on the 10 in a row, you've got Neil Lennon sacked, you're an embarrassment. You go out and you stand there and you face down those blue jerseys and you suck it up and you use it as motivation for next season. If you can't use it for motivation, get the hell out of here. That this should be the punishment for this group of Celtic players, is that they have to stand there.
Even if Ross County won the league, Celtic shouldn't be giving them the Guard of Honour. It doesn't matter. And as Pat Nevin said on the football show on Monday night, the players don't care. So if the players don't care, then there's no point in doing it. It's embarrassing for everyone all round that somebody has to stand there and clap the champions onto the pitch.
That's the point. Embarrass them, humiliate them, so that maybe they might actually show a bit of character next season.
I don't know. I think it's very much for the fans. And if the fans aren't there, then I just don't see the point in doing it. So let's move on to the FA Cup then, Nathan, because Bournemouth are taking on Southampton 12:15 on Saturday. FA Cup can throw out these results sometimes. Bournemouth aren't that great at the minute. Southampton are terrible at the minute. So you'd probably see an upset on the cards here.
I'm not sure, because Bournemouth haven't had to do a huge amount to get through. I know they beat Burnley, but they had some lower league opposition. And even though there's a great rivalry on the South Coast between these two clubs, Bournemouth have more to play for away from the FA Cup. They're in a right old scrap for a playoff spot in the Championship. They're desperate to get into that. They're not going to have Shane Long tomorrow because he's ineligible, as he's on loan from Southampton. So I think, strangely, actually, Southampton will be putting a lot more stock in this, particularly with the way their league form has just collapsed. One win in their last 12 games, massively hampered by injuries. Danny Ings hasn't looked the same player since he came back from injury in the last few weeks. Theo Walcott had been playing some of his best football of probably the last 6 or 7 years before he got injured. And they don't have the depth to step in. Shea Adams has been a little bit hit and miss. But I think Southampton will see a big opportunity in this one to reach an FA Cup semi-final, which for a club of their size hasn't happened on a regular basis over the last few years. And Bournemouth may just have their eye on the league fixtures. So I think there's a big chance for Southampton to go and win this, having already beaten Arsenal and Wolves so far, to go and show that I think Southampton at full strength are a top 10 Premier League team. They just haven't had the depth, and they've had way too many injuries this season to be able to keep up with the good early start.
Emmet, in the FA Cup at this stage, do you see people backing the underdog for the sake of the fact that they're underdogs?
I would say so, but I kind of... with a game like this, I think just as Nathan mentioned, just Danny Ings being absent, I think would make me very reluctant to back Southampton against decent opposition. So the prices here are Bournemouth 13-5, the draw 12-5, and Southampton evens. No strong opinion here, but just I can see this being maybe kind of a low-scoring 0-0, 1-1 in extra time. I definitely give Bournemouth a chance with no Ings for Southampton. Yeah,
we've got a couple of good fixtures coming up later on in the FA Cup as well. Everton against Man City, 5:30 on Saturday night. So Everton again beaten by Burnley last week. Dwight McNeil with a fabulous goal. It was one of the goals of the season so far. And Man City are just going into this game far too strong, far too good a form for me to look past them. And I know there was talk about the City quadruple, and Zinchenko was talking about the fact that, you know, the City players are thinking that maybe that they can go and do it, and then Pep Guardiola came out and squashed that fairly quickly. I love the fact that Zinchenko was talking about the quadruple, because if I was a City fan, I would be absolutely in love with a player who has that confidence that this team are good enough to go on and do that, because they've got a reasonable chance in the Champions League. They're probably favourites going into this game and in the FA Cup, and they're probably going to win the Carabao Cup, and they've already got the Premier League signed off on. So really the Champions League is the only sort of iffy one in this quadruple. I can definitely see Man City doing the domestic treble, but I presume with Everton's form and the fact that they're not scoring as free flowing as they were earlier on this season, I presume that Man City would be strong favourites in this, Emmet.
Absolutely, yeah. So the Everton are 17-2, so just over 8-1. The draw 9-2, and City is sure is 2-7. It's a cliche. I think the only hope for Everton, it's a bit of a cliche, but Carlo Ancelotti's big game record is genuinely excellent. And Everton have beaten Liverpool, Chelsea, and Leicester in the league this season, and drew at Old Trafford. I think the other possible hope for them, and in terms of, and the bet I'd be looking at here, is Gylfi Sigurdsson to score any time at 7-1. The reason for that is that City have conceded 7 goals from penalties this season, which is actually a third of the total goals they conceded all year, which would be a higher percentage than any other team. I think with Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison up front, they'll give Stones and Diaz a tougher test than probably nearly any strike force in the league, I would say. And it wouldn't surprise me Everton forced a penalty, but you're still looking at probably a 2-1, 3-1 City win here.
Sheffield United absolutely embarrassing last week against Leicester. Nathan, managerless still. Are they absolutely doomed this week when they take on Chelsea?
It won't take me 2 minutes to make a case for Sheffield United, because there really is none. There's nothing to suggest that they can win this game. Never mind the fact that Chelsea are unbeaten since Thomas Tuchel came. They've 6 clean sheets in a row. They look a team full of confidence. No matter how many changes he makes, they've all bought into what he's about, that he can make 3-4 changes, he can bring a bit of freshness, and whoever comes in does the job. And as we know, Sheffield United last week, you're right, it was humiliating. It was embarrassing. It was very much out of sync with what we've seen from them over the last couple of years. Obviously, you can put that down to Chris Wilder going, because generally they don't take big beatings. It was their biggest defeat since coming back to the Premier League. And like, the margins are tight. I looked last season, of the 14 games they won, 9 of them were by a single goal. This season, of the 23 they've lost, 14 have been by a single goal. So there's not a huge amount in it while Chris Wilder was there. Last season, you could have predicted that 11 pretty much week in, week out. Like a lot of teams, once the injuries started to come, and they just have no threat. When David McGoldrick is your main goal threat, you're probably going to be in a bit of trouble, in that he is a creator. He is someone who likes to drop deep. So this would be as big a shock as we've seen in the FA Cup for many a year. Even though they are 2 Premier League teams, it feels as though they're a world apart right now.
Yeah, I was surprised with how bad they were, because, I mean, they brought in a couple of good youngsters as well, with Ethan Ampadu and Ryan Brewster coming into the club. And Brewster never really got an opportunity there at all, even though they weren't scoring goals. I wonder, was that because he just wasn't doing it, or was it because Chris Wilder didn't fancy him?
It's a strange one, isn't it, that they spent that much money on what is still an unproven talent. Yes, there's huge expectations from at Liverpool, but when you need goals to stay in the league, and I think if you look at the statistics, generally a goal gets you a point in the Premier League. So you need, like they did last season, to get 39 goals. They need 39, 40 goals. They've got nowhere near that. And should they have gone with somebody a bit older, maybe from the Championship, who has been scoring goals on a regular basis, because they have plenty of the old lads there who are a big physical presence, but Brewster hasn't worked out. Ampadu has done well when he's got games. He's probably got more than he expected, and I thought he was one of the only players, probably the only one, who could leave last week against Leicester with his head held high. Obviously, he can't play this weekend because he's up against his parent club, but yeah, it's just been the most forgettable season, which is a shame considering all they achieved last year.
Yeah, definitely. Emmet, I presume this game isn't even worth looking at because it plays so strongly in the favour of Chelsea.
I agree, but I think it's one of the safest bets for any accumulator this weekend is Chelsea to win 2-0 at 5-6 for all the reasons Nathan out. I think the price actually looks fairly big here. I'd be pretty surprised if Sheffield United found the net. The other thing with Chelsea is it's hard. Usually at the stage of the season we're at, it's hard to say that a team has scope for improvement. But I think Chelsea do, and I think we started to see that against Atletico Madrid during the week. The Havertz, Werner axis up front is starting to gel. It looks like to me, and N'Golo Kante played like he was playing the season Leicester won the league. He was absolutely in dominant form. So I think Chelsea are a huge threat in both the FA Cup and the Champions League.
Yeah, we'll finish off with the final game, 5:30 on Sunday, Leicester City against Man United. This is a game that has been sort of give or take over the last couple of years. It's been really tight and often has come down to a penalty decision. Man United have come out on top on a couple of occasions where they may not have deserved to, and last year as well, the final game of the season when it came down to top 4, and you just always fancied United going into it. The fact that this is a cup game might change that, because United might be a little bit tired from the Europa League on Thursday night. Leicester obviously out of the competition, and I just think that going into this game, Marcus Rashford isn't firing. He looks like he's carrying a knock. Bruno Fernandes looks like he's absolutely exhausted. Paul Pogba coming back is a massive boost for them, but any team that have been sitting back against Man United and sort of playing on the counter-attack have been getting some good chances when they do counter-attack, and Leicester are the best counter-attacking side in the Premier League at the minute, discounting Man United. United's defence has been very strong, but I just think going into this weekend, Leicester firing like they are, United not firing like they are, but still sort of getting over the line. In a cup game where goals count, this seems like a game that Leicester can really take advantage of them.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And Leicester 15-8, the draw 23-10, and Man United 13-10. As you suggest, I think it's hard for United coming back from Milan. They may or may not train today, but probably only get one real training session in before Sunday. And I feel United centre halves, whether it's Lindelof, Bailly or Maguire, will really struggle to cope with the pace of Vardy and Iheanacho. I would lean Leicester in terms of the match prices. In terms of a bet here, the bet I like is Harry Maguire to be carded at 4-1. He's more cards than any other United player this season, and I think he's badly out of form. I think whether it's a hangover from last summer, or whether he's still carrying kind of a muscle injury that he picked up last season. I don't think he's on his game. I think it's a really bad matchup for him against the pace of Iheanacho and Vardy.
Well, like Marcus Rashford and Bruno Fernandes, Maguire is the player that has played pretty much every single minute for United this year, so it's probably a bit of tiredness from that as well. And he does not have the pace to cope with fast forwards like Jamie Vardy and Iheanacho. Before we finish up, as we said, we did give away €11,500 last week with the Paddy Power near miss. We do have a winner this week. Emmet, who is he and what has he won? And bring us through the bets.
Absolutely. So big congratulations to Owen Mulhern this week. So last week he did four selections for his accumulator. All four were recommended on this very podcast by my colleague Jason Murphy. Some good tipping as well. So 3 wins out of 4. So Diego Jota to score any time, Kelechi Iheanacho to score any time, and under 2.5 goals in Leeds v Chelsea. All wins. And then the fourth leg was no goal score in West Ham v Crystal Palace. And that game actually only finished 1-0 with VAR awarding a penalty to Crystal Palace. So slightly unlucky to lose there. And so we felt that fit our near miss criteria. Mm-hmm. So we'll be fully him paying out as a winner, which will be close to around €380 here.
Well, good man, Owen. And if you want to be like Owen and our winner from a couple of weeks ago with €11,500, just screenshot your losing bet. It has to be 1 or 2 parts that didn't come through. It has to be very close. It has to be a near miss, as the title gives away. Screenshot it, send it to us on DM, hashtag PP near miss on Twitter, or WhatsApp it to us on 087 9180 180. That's us done for the Paddy Power half hour this week. Always remember to bet responsibly, have fun with it, only bet what you can afford, and we'll be back again next week at 1:30. We'll chat to you later.
The Paddy Power Half Hour on OTB Sports. Minimal contact in stadiums. That shouldn't stop the usual suspects from going down. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.